All right, so we're going to talk about tissue salts today. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overview and some real practical tips and some experiences that I've had with tissue salts and some of the people that I've seen had with tissue salts, and we'll kind of go from there. So we're going to cover, of course, the history here, the key cell salts and applications, some of the combinations, symptoms, and some other tips to stay healthy kind of along the way. And this lesson is for educational purposes only and not intended to replace your advice of your professional practitioner. So I get all the legal stuff out of the way. Okay, so what's the history? So, of course, Hahnemann started the whole concept of homeopathy way back. And then the progression when it came to the tissue salts was Virchow talked about a collection of cells and how to treat the cells. So it was a big focus on how to treat the cells. And then there was Mollenskott talked about the whole dependency of organs on the inorganic constituents, which of course is the minerals. So Schuster kind of took that to the next level, and he put out a paper there in 1873 called the Abridged Homeopathic Therapeutics. Now, there's a lot of controversy back there because people didn't like the fact that he was, I guess, going away from not necessarily going away from homeopathy, but developed this whole different system of medicine. And the whole concept there was that if you have a disturbance in cells, which a lot of times can be brought about by a disturbance of minerals at the cellular level, you can actually cause disease when the cells start dysfunctioning, but you can also heal disease when healthy cells come back, or when cells actually come back in a healthy state versus a disease state. So that's how the whole concept of the biochemic system of medicine was developed. So Schuster developed a system called the biochemic system of medicine. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Chemistry of life is the definition of biochemistry. So like we talked about earlier, so the cells are basically made up of organic and inorganic material. But what people don't realize is a lot of things can't happen without the mineral component of the body. So for example, a lot of vitamins can't fully function without a mineral component. Digestion's affected, nerve transmissions are affected. The gray matter of the brain is affected, building bone, blood, tissue. None of those things can happen without a foundation of minerals. In fact, structurally, we couldn't even stand up without minerals because we wouldn't have any bone structures there. Okay, so tissue salts are super important. Now, if you have minerals in the wrong concentration, sometimes it can affect whether things can get into the cell, whether they can absorb, or whether they get released from the cells or get released from the body. So those are, minerals are really important when it comes to balancing the flow of fluids and nutrients throughout the system in and out. So Schuster identified 12 key inorganic materials. Now, there's actually more than that, but there's 12, I guess, key ones that have the most effect overall. So if you think about tissue salts in an analogy format, think about them as a foundation. So the first thing you do when you build a house is you put in a foundation. And once your foundation's in, you put up the walls and your roof and you decorate it and you make it look all nice and pretty. But if part of that foundation cracks, that part of the house is coming down with it. So think about the tissue salts as kind of the foundation of your health. Because without a proper mineral foundation at the cellular level, you can get all sorts of problems. So the second example is compared to like raising kids. Now you can raise kids two ways. One way is you can scream at them, which is really important if they're in a dangerous situation. You got to go, stop, don't cross the road. But most of the time, you want to talk to your kids lovingly and kind of build them up that way. So a lot of drugs are kind of like screaming at your kids. They have an immediate effect on the body, and sometimes a really hard effect. And that's why they can have some serious side effects. Now, even certain herbs, you have to be careful in what dosing you're doing and how much you're doing, because they can have some effects too. And even certain supplements in the wrong types of dosing can have some side effects. Well, the tissue salts are more like talking to your kids lovingly. You have slow building up of the body. Now, the third analogy is think about the tissue salts as the brick layers of the body. everything that's organic that you put into your body is kind of like the brick. But if you don't have enough brick layers, it can affect, again, digestion, building bone, blood, tissue, development of skin, digestion, or nerve transmissions, all those kind of things. Okay, so they're like the brick layers of the body. So let's do a 2-second potency review. So there's things called cell salts, biochemic salts, tissue salts, Schuster salts. They're all interchangeable, okay? It's just the same thing, a different name, depending which book you're reading. They're calling one or the other, but they're basically all the same thing. Now you'll see X. Now X is when you take one part of a substance, dilute it with 9 parts of a diluent, you bring it together, you triturate it, which is like succussion kind of, but it's when they use it for minerals or hard to break down botanicals that you can't succuss because liquid won't break it down. You have to grind it. That makes your first potency. Now you take one part of that 1X potency, you add 9 parts diluent, you triturate it, that makes like your second potency. And I take one part of that second potency plus 9 parts of the diluent, triturate it, and makes it 3, and it goes on and on and on. Okay, so it's basically 1 in 10 dilution. So X equals D. X in Roman numerals is 10. D, in Europeans, they use D a lot, which means for decimal, which again means for 10. Okay, so the tissue salts are always pretty well in an X potency, typically 3, 6, and sometimes 12. So if you're ever comparing C's and X's in the potency wise, not to get too complicated, but just think a 2X equals a 1C, or a 1C equals a 2X. Now, some people say to me, hey, Mitch, 1C, like C means 100 in Roman numerals, 1 times 100 does not equal 2 times 10. But mathematically, if you actually looked at that, you can see on the first column there, it says 2x equals 10 to the power of 2. Okay, so if you look at 100 to the power of 1, which is 1c, equals 100, and 10 to the power of 2, 10 to the power of 2 is 100. So mathematically does equal, but the easiest thing to remember is a 2x equals a 1c if you ever compare potencies, okay? So, and this is just more, not actually potencies, it's when you're comparing dilutions. Okay, so when you're actually comparing dilutions. So organic chemistry is limited to what they call Avogadro's numbers. So, when you're talking about homeopathic remedies, people say, oh, there's nothing in it. They're talking about Avogadro's constant, where they can't measure particles beyond 24x when you're talking about organic chemistry principles. So they can be diluted with sucrose, water, alcohol, glycerin. Most of the time it's lactose, and I'll talk about the lactose issue that comes up a lot. People go, oh, lactose intolerance, why do you guys put it in lactose? And so we'll discuss that in a sec here. And like I said, what I said before, the succussion is bigger shaking of a diluent, but in tissue salts, they actually call something called trituration, which is the grinding in a mortar and pestle of the minerals until they get broken down to its finest particle. Okay, so let's talk about lactose. So for most, so there's 2 things. There's allergies and there's intolerances. Now, for somebody that's got an intolerance, it normally needs a certain amount of substance to trigger a reaction in the body. And for lactose, for a highly sensitive person that's taking lactose products, they normally need to ingest a minimum of 5 grams or 5,000 milligrams. You need to swallow it, digest it in the intestinal tract to get this reaction. Now, for someone to get 5,000 milligrams of our tissue salts, they'd have to swallow a minimum of 78 tablets at one time, which is about 26 plus times the normal dose. So most people that are lactose intolerant shouldn't have a problem with a normal dose, because most people, when it comes to allergies are normally caused by proteins in foods, not typically carbohydrates, because everything you eat is a carbohydrate. And lactose is technically just a milk sugar. It's just a carbohydrate. So there's no protein component in lactose. And if you're comparing it to our larger tablets, for example, like our Lacramps PM product, those tablets are a little bit larger. They're 3-grain tablets. But even there, they still have to eat a minimum of 26 tablets at one time. So normally, most people that are lactose intolerant shouldn't have a problem with a normal dose. So again, let's look at the allergies to lactose. It's typically fairly rare. I mean, there's always the exception to everything out there. Allergies are not typically concentration-based, they're just presence-based. So if you walk into a room and there's an allergen, and even though you don't know it's there, you'll instantly react. Okay, so you'll just instantly react to that. No issues about it kind of thing. So of course, if somebody's truly allergic to lactose, you're not going to recommend it with an allergy. But it's not very common for sure, because most people have a problem with the casein or the protein side of milk, while lactose is actually just the milk sugar. So, and sometimes I tell people, you can even put the tablets in the water, and most of the lactose will actually sink to the bottom. But even if it's diluted in water, the effects would even be less than having it direct. But here's the thing too, our tablets are instantly dissolving. So if you take them, most of it absorbs through mucous membranes. So you'd actually even have to swallow more than that to actually get into the gut, because in the gut's where you get that reaction. So the tablets absorb through mucous membranes because they're quick dissolving. The chances are even less. Okay, so that's kind of different. There's actually a great document on the online training program that we have, and the Highlands HTU program. There's a great document talking about the differences between allergies and lactose, and it really lays it out super well in the PDF format. So what are the key benefits? Well, of course, they're natural, they're safe. The key is they're gentle. So, the whole concept of tissue salts was that if you give minerals in a certain concentration, you're not going to disturb healthy cells. Okay, so the key is not disturbing healthy cells. If you take too much of a single mineral, you can actually cause imbalances in the body. So people, have to be careful. Sometimes what they take is they take too much of one thing, you can actually cause an imbalance. It's kind of like drinking too much water. You can actually drink too much water and cause imbalances in your electrolytes and your mineral balances. So they can be taken with other medication. There's no history known of any contraindications with the tissue salts. They're all naturally occurring in your body. But most people are deficient just because of the way we live our lives nowadays. They're not habit forming, so you're not going to get addicted to them like you can with other kinds of things, including things like sugar. We're all addicted to sugar or caffeine, whatever your vice may be. And then they taste great because lactose is a milk sugar, so obviously there's a bit of sweetness to it. But the huge advantage of our products is that they're quick dissolving. I mean, if you took our tablet and you dipped your finger in some water and you just press it down on a tablet, it just instantly dissolves the tablet. Like our tablets, we have a special process where we just make instantly dissolvable tablets. And the cool thing about our tablets, the tissue salts, is because we have this special soft tablet process, we don't have to use a magnesium stearate to bind the tablet and seal it and all that kind of stuff, which typically makes the tablet hard. And that's why our tablets are very soft, because we don't use magnesium stearate in our tissue salts at all. Okay, I think we're probably one of the only ones that don't, so that makes it unique, and that's why our products dissolve so quickly in water. It's fantastic. Just makes it really easy. And on a cost per dose basis, our tissue salts are such a super good value. The easiest way to take it, just take a capful, put it in your water bottle, shake it up, after you put the lid on, of course, and you see it's a bit foggy, and then it just disappears right after that. So that's a great way to take it. So how do they compare to homeopathic remedies? People say, well, are they homeopathic? What the heck are those tissue salts? They're homeopathically prepared, but that's kind of where the similarity ends, because homeopathic remedies they're called heterogeneous, which means they're made from botanicals, animal products, minerals, you name it, they're made from all sorts of different things. Well, tissue salts are always just mineral based, okay? They're just a mineral component. So here's the other cool thing about them is when it comes to minerals, there's alkaline things in the body, there's acidic things in the body. Well, the tissue salts on a table of element charts always have the acid-alkaline balance. And there's always a positive and a negative ion, so they call it a cation. So which is a positive ion So, and an anion, which is a negative ion. So they're always balanced. You're never going to overdose. You're never going to cause an imbalance. That's a really cool thing about them. Again, they're quick dissolving, and they're needed for all sorts of cellular function, building bone, blood, tissue. Without a proper mineral foundation, you're not going to get the full benefits of anything else that you're putting into your body. Because it doesn't matter what you put into your body if it's not getting absorbed or broken down or digested properly into the system. And a lot of people nowadays struggle with digestion. They struggle with absorption. So anything we can do to help the system just manage things better, the better off we're going to be. And the concentrations, like people think, oh, the tissue cells are such minute concentrations. But the difference between a cramp and not a cramp is a minute concentration. It's very tiny. Like, we're talking micro doses in regards to getting a cramp or not a cramp. So let's get into the individual tissue cells here. I'm talking a bit fast because I'm trying to turbo through so we don't get cut off too fast. So calc fluor, the key thing to think about calc fluor is elasticity of tissue. So things that either move too much or don't move at all. So, we're talking about loose skin, loose teeth, tooth enamel, the surface of your bone. In fact, if you ever have any bone fractures, calc fluor is a key remedy when it comes to healing the bone fractures. Okay, I've had so many great testimonies of people that took tons of calc fluor and had amazing healing of fractures and bone breaks and stuff like that. Okay, so calc fluor is a really key one there. And of course, things like varicose veins, hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids is kind of like a varicose vein in a sense too. So again, for elasticity of tissue, integrity of tissue. Now, here's the thing about varicose veins. Like varicose veins, it's when your valves dysfunction at certain parts throughout your vein, and that's why the blood kind of pools in those areas. And you have to remember most veins on the outside of the leg are not the important ones. The ones that run down the center of your leg are the ones that really pump the blood back up the body there. So, but to make things so they don't get worse, calc fluor is a key remedy when it comes to sprains, strains, tooth enamel, mending bones. My wife, Julia, has had amazing results taking tissue salt number 1 and tissue salt number 2 in combination with the Bio-12. And after about 4 months, her nails are just like super, like she's got really nice nails normally, but now they're just like, it's almost like she had them polished. Like, people sometimes get their nails polished and they look like super shiny and beautiful. But she's just been blown away. She's telling all her girlfriends how amazing calc phos has been for her nails. So that's another potential side benefit that you can get there too. So then, calc phos. There we go. Calc phos is the most abundant cell salt in your body. So 57% of your bone is made up of calcium phosphate, so it's really important for overall structure. Again, if you break a bone, calc phos is a key remedy to mend the bone long term. It's a great remedy for growing pains. Kids between 6 and 12, they go through this growing phase where they're achy, but it's not like a cramp. It's just this achiness in the joint areas because they're growing so rapidly. Calc phos is super important remedy for that. It's kind of like the mother hen of all cell salts, so it affects all the other cell salts too. So it's a key remedy when it comes to overall development. If somebody's physically developing slower than normal, calc phos is a key remedy. I remember one practitioner from India was saying that they always recommended this for women that were pregnant because it's such an important overall remedy for building the body up. So that's a really key remedy. It talks about there for the production of protein production, necessary for protein production. So for athletes, of course, that are using protein for growth and strength. I find most people, like I do some personal training on the side, most people nowadays do not eat enough protein just to even maintain their muscles that they have, let alone grow or get stronger. So calc phos could be really important for that too. So for growing pains, just put a capsule in the kid's water bottle. Most kids don't drink enough water nowadays, so I highly recommend doing that. We did that with our kids when they were young, put the capsule of this in their water bottle. and just to, again, help them develop nice and strong. Kellogg's Self, they call this one the cleansing remedy because it's a great remedy for people that have, for example, wounds that don't heal over very well. So they call this like a purifier, a detoxifier. But for example, people that get that sores but they don't heal, like for example, even diabetics and stuff like that, where they get sores and stuff like that, this is one of the remedies to help sores kind of heal up a bit. Okay, of course, we're talking about like people have abscesses and boils. Now, if you want things to drain, if you want to actually ripen it and drain something, then you want to take silica. Silica number 12 is what they call the biochemic surgeon. So that's the one you want to take to drain. But if something just keeps oozing, then you want to use Kellogg's Self to help things heal over. Of course, even things like eczema, acne, any type of skin issues, Kellogg's Self can definitely be beneficial. Of course, when it comes to any type of skin issues, you got to look at the diet first. I mean, 90% of skin issue problems are probably diet or hormonal related, as kids are going through different phases in their life. Okay, so you can't avoid those kind of things, but you can definitely minimize them by good diet. And here's the funny thing about good diet. You could think you're eating a great diet, but if you're eating a food that doesn't agree with you for whatever reason, and it might be a really healthy food, it can still affect you. So, sometimes you need to go through food allergy testing or doing an elimination diets where you eliminate and start really basic. So sometimes you need to find those things. And the reason I say that is when I first met Julia, which was over like 33 years ago, a long time ago, she had a tough time with her skin. And she ended up going on the Raw Rose Detox. I mean, a lot of people probably out there are familiar with the Raw Rose Detox, and Terry Willard, got to know him really well. And he put on a 9-month detox. Now, the thing about the 9-month detox, this is kind of what it does. So imagine this is your, I can't really see it because there you go. Oh, there. Imagine this is your body. When you do a detox, let's say your body is this full of toxins, all the way down here, your toxin. You do a detox program, you're just taking a teeny wean out. Maybe you do a little bit longer, just a teeny wean out. You've been building these toxins up for years. So when she did a 9-month detox program, it totally cleared out the toxins in her system. Her skin totally cleared up, no medications anymore. Nothing. So, I mean, that was just like a super eye-opener. Made us realize how powerful good nutrition can be. Okay, so I can't overemphasize the fact of, sometimes you got to play around and figure out what exactly can be affecting you if you can't seem to figure it out. But a lot of times it is diet. And like I say, it might be a good diet, but you need to figure out what it is. Ferrum Phos, first aid remedy. First remedy for the onset of a cold or flu, inflammatory type conditions, low-grade fevers, you want to think Ferrum Phos. I recommend a capful in every athlete's water bottle because it's an oxygen carrier, which is really important during exercise. It's also anti-inflammatory, which is important during exercise. Because when you exercise, you actually have an inflammatory response. And that's why people that exercise too much, don't give themselves enough time to recover, get inflammatory type conditions. So like I say, the onset of colds and fevers, people that get majorly red-faced during an event, like sporting event, definitely are Ferrum Phos indicated. Excessive menstruation, Ferrum Phos indicated. Nosebleeds, Ferrum Phos indicated. Ferrum Phos is whenever you're in doubt, take Ferrum Phos. And one thing I always like to talk about too is get to know what your heartbeat is. Most people have no idea what the heart rate is. So let's say your heart rate was normally 60 beats a minute. Every morning, you wake up every morning, you take your heartbeat. Yeah, seems to be about 60 beats. When you're laying in bed and you're just relaxed. And then one day you wake up and you test and you go, oh, it's like 72. What the heck's going on here? So a couple things should be going on. You're either getting sick and your body knows it already. It's starting to fight it, but you don't feel it yet until about 3 days later, and all of a sudden, like, boom, you're out of there in 3 days. You could be really stressed about something, so hopefully you can, that gets managed. Or you're exercising or you're overdoing it physically and your body's not having time to recover. And the cool thing about checking that, if you know your heart rate's going up, like I know myself, like I always check it. I have a heart rate going back way back, and my heart rate goes up. I'll make sure I go to bed on time. I don't overwork out. I'll eat right, make sure I'm drinking enough water. All these kind of things, taking right remedies or whatever to support your body, because a lot of times your body will give you some warning before you actually get sick. But if we ignore it, all of a sudden we get sick. We go, oh my goodness, it's so terrible, time to get sick. I got so much to do. But your body actually gives you lots of warning. So get to know what your heartbeat is. And if you're doing an exercise program, even more important, because if your heartbeat's at 60 and 6 months later after this great program you're doing, your heartbeat's at 65, well, that program's not doing it for you, because your heartbeat should be getting stronger, which means it should beat less. So that means you need to change your program. Again, you can put in your water bottle during exercise. In fact, I normally recommend Ferrum Phos combined with Mag Phos in the water bottle for athletes, because, like I said, oxygen carrier inflammation, of course, Mag Phos to reduce the chance of cramping during, after, or at nighttime for your exercise. So Calamere, and known as the ear, nose, and throat remedy. So a remedy when you have congestion. When the congestion color is typically like a milky, the white, egg white kind of color, discharge coming out or coming up from your chest. You got plugged up eustachian tubes. That's when you want to think about Calamere for sure. So basically the second stage of a cold and flu. So you can combine it with Ferrum Phos. So alternate with Ferrum Phos because you're still dealing with the onset of the cold, some inflammation, and here's what you want to do for discharge. So anybody that's got plugged up ears, of course, if you got mucus type issues, again, you got to check your food out. If you got dairy in there, you don't think it's giving you mucus, you might want to think again. Try eliminating dairy for 30 days and see if you still have mucus. Or it could be some other food that's affecting you too, okay? So just think about this. Talks about there for, hard, croupy type coughs, warts on the hands. Again, another kind of a bit of acne in there. But most of this remedy is really well known, like I say, when it comes to ear, nose, and throat, congestion type of conditions, and definitely plugged up ears. Stuffy head in the head, same thing. When you just basically feel all congested up there, you want to think about Calamere. I had a great testimony from a lady that had major congestion for like over a month. They couldn't figure out what it was. She went to the doctor, all sorts of stuff, and she ended up taking Calamere and had amazing results. So think about that bricklayer scenario again. Maybe Calamere was just that bricklayer that just enabled the rest of the body just to do what it needs to do. Sometimes you're just missing a key component, and it can make a huge difference. Cali Phos, any remedy. So I get the 10-minute warning meeting here. Like I said, if it does cut out on me, you just pop back into that link and it'll pop you right back in. But this is a key nerve remedy. And when you're feeling overwhelmed, overtired, overstressed, overexcited, you're afraid, you're nervous about an event coming up, speaking at an event, meeting the in-laws, going on a date, all that kind of stuff, going to the dentist. I mean, who wouldn't be nervous about doing that? So anything like that, this is a key remedy when it comes to supporting the nervous system. So whenever you just feel worn out, you definitely want to think Cali Phos. And nowadays, with all the uncertainty and all the crazy stuff that's going on, Cali Phos is definitely a key remedy that you want to consider. In fact, a lot of times when we're mentally going through a lot of stuff, we get an upset stomach. So this can be helpful for upset stomach just because it helps with you mentally. I mean, it's the reverse too. You get an upset stomach, what happens? You get nauseous, right? There's a direct link between your gut and your head. So if one's not happy, the other one typically follows suit pretty fast. Okay, so Cali Phos, pre-event nervousness for sporting events or any type of event, a test, Cali Phos is definitely what you want to consider. One of the naturopaths I heard talk once, she said that she gives all her patients basically the Cali Phos when they come in, and 70% of their physical ailments go away when you deal with the mental side first. That's how powerful our mind can be. So, and it obviously affects your energy. I'll wait for the example on the biochemic phosphate product, but it's a similar example to the nerve tonic. So yeah, so this is the key one if you're ever feeling a bit out of touch with mentally and just feeling a bit overwhelmed. So Kali Self, key remedy when it comes to respiration and perspiration. Okay, so this is a key remedy for the third stage of a cold or flu. So when somebody's got the yellow discharge in the upper respiratory tract, or the yellow discharge coming from your nasal cavities. So when you're really getting that sticky yellowish stuff, you want to think about Kali Self in alternation with number 4, Ferrum Phos. Also, people that don't perspire very much during exercise, this is a great remedy for respiration, for sweating in a sense, because sweating is important to keep you actually cool during exercise. It's cooling the body down on purpose for a reason. When it comes to healing skin type issues, Kali Self brings oxygen to the epidermis and to the surface of the skin. So for burns, scrapes, in fact, Kali Self and Kali Mur, I think, for burns and scrapes together is a great combination to heal the skin. So that's a really important combination there too. Talks about stiffness. I mean, a lot of times stiffness can be this remedy or it can be number 10. I like number 10 personally because it's normally associated with hyperacidity. Of course, because it's a sulfuricum, so it's also good for skin type conditions. They talk about this, the natural remedy for dandruff support. And so here's the thing about the names too. People think, well, what's the difference between Kali sulfuricum, Kali sulfate, potassium sulfate, all these kind of things, right? Well, there's your Latin name, which is typically like the things that's say like sulfuricums or somethingums, like those are like Latin names. You have your regular name like potassium sulfate, and then you have your chemical name, which would be the chemical formula. So that's the difference between sometimes the different names. Then you got Kali Sulf, which is just a short form, which is typically mostly used out there. Mag Phos, number 1 remedy for cramping, menstrual cramping, muscle cramping, migraine headaches or headaches in general, especially when you put it in hot water. Put it in hot water, 8 to 10 tabs, stir it in the water, sip it back, and you're good to go. So Mag Phos is an amazing remedy. And we have 2 great products, Leg Cramps and Leg Cramps PM, that we sell gazillions. In fact, we were advertising during the Tour de France in stage 15. If you're following the Tour de France, you might have seen that, which is a pretty big deal. We sponsor the Boston Marathon, because we find that not only seniors cramp up, athletes cramp up. I mean, everybody and their dog is cramping up nowadays, especially when you're on all sorts of different medications and you're not eating right, you're not drinking right, or you're over-exercising. I mean, there's so many variables that can cause cramping. Mag Phos is a great solution for that. In fact, I've had a lot of people say, I was using regular magnesium and I was still cramping, and the minute I added Mag Phos, it made all the difference. So even though I think Mag Phos will do it by itself, I tell people, look, if they're on magnesium already of whatever sort, just have them add Mag Phos. It'll be just that much more effective. Because again, it all comes down to results. This remedy is also one for people that crave sugar. I mean, everybody nowadays craves sugar. If you ever get that bloating feeling after a certain type of meal, you might want to consider Mag Phos. But it's definitely best known for pain and cramping. It's kind of like the biochemic aspirin in a sense. So for any sharpshooting pain, Mag Phos is the key remedy. Okay, so if you got headaches or migraines or any type of muscle twitching or sore muscles, you want to definitely consider Mag Phos as a key remedy. So there's the little red box there. I mean, there's a lot of medications out there that can actually cause cramping. So this is just, again, no history of any contraindications. It's a very safe product that's super effective. I mean, it's probably one of the top selling tissue salads is Mag Phos because it's so effective and so gentle that people just love it. Nat Mur is actually homeopathically prepared salt, and it's the water balancer. So people that retain water or don't retain enough water, some people don't retain enough water, they're actually dehydrated no matter how much they drink. So it determines what the moisture in your cell is. So it's kind of important in that sense. Now I'm going to give you a couple of I'm just going to look up a couple of things that I had here that I was going to mention. I should have mentioned some of these before. Okay, so there's some clinical stuff that I have some clinical stuff here that I've been collecting for all sorts of different remedies and stuff like that. So it talks about Nat Muir, for example, from a clinical settings. People that frequently overindulge in alcohol, even though I do like number 11 a little bit better when it comes to liver support, constipation, people have very dry stools, anal fissures, cold sores, hay fever, herpes eruption, chickenpox. I mean, all these things, not Muir, I mean, it's been one of the remedies being used clinically for some of those conditions and some of the different various textbooks that I've gone through. So, but it's a key one for the production of hydrochloric acid. So people that are low in hydrochloric acid. I mean, most people that take tablets to reduce acid, most people don't have too much acid. There's an imbalance going on. So, you know, the last thing you want to do is actually reduce the acid in your stomach because you want to break down things properly so you can get absorb them properly. And you do need a certain amount of salt in your body. Like people are always freaked out about salt. But if you're eating natural foods, whole foods, you know, it's very rarely going to have a sugar or a salt problem because most of those natural foods won't have excessive amounts of either of those. It's only when foods are packaged and preserved with sugar or salt that you can get potential problems. Because without enough salt in your body, you will not be able to get out of bed. Okay, so, and there's a key thing there where it says a 1 to 3% hydration, like decrease in hydration, can cause a difference of 8 to 10% in speed and strength. I mean, that's the difference between losing and winning a race or an event, because that's a huge difference in power and speed when you're dehydrated just a little bit. I mean, that's nothing can put somebody out of a competition faster. Like imagine the Tour de France. Those guys get dehydrated, they're toast. They're out of there, right? So that's why they're constantly drinking. Nat Phos, the hyperacidic remedy, so acid neutralizer. A key remedy that I always recommend for people post-workout. Okay, so after the workout, I definitely recommend Nat Phos because it reduces excessive lactic uric acid buildup. In fact, my favorite combination of Nat Phos for gout-type symptoms is combining Nat Phos with black cherry concentrate. I love the Bernard Jensen black cherry concentrate, that thick, syrupy stuff. I mean, it tastes super good. It's also super alkalizing. When I was competing in natural bodybuilding, that was a huge product I used. Black cherry concentrate in all my protein drinks, Nat Phos, just to help reduce excess of acidity. When it comes to cracking in the joints, I mean, some people have really cracky joints. Sometimes it's an alignment issue. It could be a muscular imbalance issue.